Good morning, everyone. It is week 2, day 3, and we're going to run through the answer to our question from yesterday, and that is, what is the volume of a sphere? Knowing only what Archimedes discovered, that if the height is 2r for the sphere, cone, and cylinder, that the sphere plus the cone will equal the cylinder. So I've already started by filling in the formula. So I know that in cylinders, they got pi r squared times h will give me the volume. And I've substituted my height, h, of 2r to get pi r squared times 2r. And I want to actually simplify this a bit more because remember, it's hard to see patterns when things are a bit of a mess. So I'm going to start by, since everything is multiplication, I'm going to start by taking my normal numbers and moving them out front. 2 is the most normal number we have. Pi is also a number, though it's less normal, so we typically put it second. And then we're left with the variables r squared times r. And don't forget, according to our algebra lesson from yesterday, that's saying r times r times r, or r to the third. So the volume of the cylinder is 2 pi r cubed. We're going to do the same thing for the volume of a cone. I know that that is 1/3 pi r squared times height. I'm going to substitute now in my height because we know that the height is 2r. So I get 1/3 times pi times r squared times my height of 2r. When I simplify this, I'm going to end up with 2 times 1/3, which is 2/3. Again, keep it as a fraction. Then we have our pi times, well, we already saw r squared times r is just r to the third. So that gives us our formula for the area or volume of a cone. Now the next thing that I did is I filled in that formula, whoop, a little bit too far down there. I filled in that formula into like what his observation was. So he had observed that the volume of a sphere is added to this cone to get this cylinder. And that means that we can solve this. So I'm going to do that by subtracting this 2/3 pi r cubed from both sides. The reason why we can do this again, or why we want to do this, is we want to get the volume of a sphere by itself. So we have a formula for the volume of a sphere. So here that leaves volume of a sphere by itself, and on this side I have 2 pi r cubed minus 2/3 pi r cubed. Well, notice here that pi r cubed is just a number. It's a repeated number, in fact. So I have 2 of them, and I'm taking away 2/3 of them. So the question is, how many pi r cubed will I be left with? Well, whatever 2 minus 2/3 is. Let's just quick solve that off to the side here. When I have this, don't forget, turn it into a top-heavy fraction, so I end up with 2 times 3, which is 6 over 3. So that's another way of writing that. Minus 2/3. And here, since the denominator is the same, I can now do 6 minus 2 over 3 to get 4/3. And that is my final answer, 4/3 pi r cubed. And I can then write this 2 different ways. I can write this as 4/3 pi r cubed, or I can write 4 times pi r cubed over 3. And both of those will give me the volume of a sphere. So now that we have this formula, we're going to look at how it's used in a couple different instances. Alright, so let's try out this formula. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at a sphere where my radius is going to be 4. This is, by the way, how you draw a sphere. You just draw a circle, go to its broadest point, that great circle inside it, and just draw in a curved line to give it the sense of depth and dimension. Now here I'm going to draw that radius in, and again I said I'm going to do a radius of 4. So if I want to find the volume, and want to spell that right, what I'm going to do is the volume of a sphere is equal to 4/3 pi r cubed. And just like before, I'm going to start by writing out my formula. Now here I only have 2 possible values that I could be looking for. I could be looking for r or v. And since I know my r is 4, I know that what I can solve for using this is v. I substitute 4 in for r, and I've actually already done that on my calculator. So I have here 4/3 pi times 4 to the third. Remember, powers here, you use that little caret button on your calculator. And that's going to give me a final volume of 268.8 2.083. So we have V sub s is equal to 268.083. And if this is in centimeters, then this would be in centimeters cubed, because we're talking about volume, which is in the third dimension. Okay, so let's try a slightly harder one then. If the volume of a sphere is 2,572.441 cubic feet, what is the circumference of the great circle? Ooh, this one has a lot of stuff in it, so let's see what we can work out. First off, I know the volume, so immediately it calls to mind the formula of volume. Volume of a sphere is equal to 4/3 pi r cubed. And I'm just going to write that one down because as soon as I see volume of a sphere and I know what that volume is, I know that I'm at least going to be able to potentially find my radius. And we'll see if we need that in just a second. So I'm going to just fill that in and then I'm going to pause and see if this helps me at all. So looking at this formula, I'll definitely be able to find the radius of the sphere. Okay, so before I go through that full work though, let's just double check that this formula is going to help. What I want is the circumference of the great circle. Now this means I need to know what the great circle is. And per our last unit, don't forget that the great circle is going to be the widest circle or the central circle of a sphere. So this right here is my great circle. And you might notice that your great circle shares with the sphere the radius. And if I know the radius of the circle, will I be able to find its circumference? Well, yeah, because the circumference of a circle is C is equal to 2 pi r. This is where those formula sheets come in handy. So all I need to do to find my circumference, this thing that I really, really want, is solve for r and substitute it into the formula. So let's find out what r is. Again, I have this formula that I can solve and I can get r by itself. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by 4/3 pi so I can get r by itself. Now you might want to do this in 2 stages. It's up to you so that you don't accidentally lose some parentheses or anything. But when you do this division, you should get an answer of 614.125. So 614.125. And I would like you to just quick try that on your calculator to make sure that you've done that division correctly, since that's where a lot of errors tend to happen. Now my next step here is to take not the square root, watch out here, since I have a third, I'm going to have to take what we call the cubic root, and I'm going to do that to both sides. Let's quick take a look at how this can be done on a calculator. So you have 2 options for doing this on a calculator. The first is go to math, that third button down. Go down on mine, it's number 4, where you can see 3, the square root. It's actually the cubic root there. And you can just go ahead, press enter, type in your 614.125, and you should get an answer of 8.5 is equal to r. And that is wonderful. That's our r. We're good to go. Let's just quick check the other thing. If you cannot find this cubic root, what you can actually do is you can take your 614.125 and you can raise it to the power of 1/3. So instead of raising it to a power of 3 or 2, you're actually undoing that power of 3 by raising it to a power of 1/3. That's just using exponent rules. So that's your second option. Keep that in mind. You're also allowed to do that. Okay, so I'm not done with this problem because even though I found my radius, I have not yet found my circumference. So I'm going to take that radius, I'm going to substitute it into the formula for circumference, and that gives me C is equal to 2 pi times 8.5. Well, 2 times 8.5 gives me an answer of 17. So I end up with 17 pi is equal to C, our circumference. Or I can actually multiply that out to see what it is. if I don't need an exact answer, and that gives me approximately 53.407. So either of these answers work, this one being exact, this one being approximate, and of course, since we were in cubic feet and circumference is talking about length, we now are in feet as a unit. Your homework for today is questions 1, 2, and 3 on the attached worksheet. You can ignore all the other ones if you would like. You do not need to submit this homework, but you do need to go through it and check with me if you have any questions. That will be all. Have a great day.